Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Friday. Today we're going to be taking a look at some maps with the rundown of Tinto map number 3, but we're also going to be looking at 2 additional maps. We're going to be looking at the religious map as well a little bit later from the previous dev diary or previous Tinto talk, and then finally we are going to be looking at, or we wanted to show a little bit of this, which is something someone posted on Reddit, which is an aggregation of all the maps we've seen so far as part of this Tinto map series, giving us a kind of glimpse of what the map in Europe is going to look at the start, having put it all together. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. Greetings and welcome to the third Tinto maps. There's a lack of a happy Friday here, but we'll let this one slide. We had a pretty happy Thursday, so we can continue on, not blasting too hard on that. Last week we received a great amount of feedback regarding Iberia, which we're working on, and this week we also reworked the map of the Low Counties, which we'll show soon. For this week we'll be taking a look at France up until its current modern borders, which you'll notice are quite different from 1337 borders. Here we see France is going to have some feudal things going on where it is going to be decentralized in some areas and also have a lot of crown lands. These are all going to be little nations inside of it, and they do give an explanation for this. While portraying the political situation of France in 1337, we had a few options. On one extreme, we could make it a centralized monarchy like England or the Iberian ones, where, you know, just taking a quick look, you can see Crown of Castile, they control everything personally, but with a much lower degree of control over its territories. Conversely, we could have had a French Crown IO, I believe that's international organization, similar to the IHRE. We decided to go with the middle term, which represents the French Crown lands, with the country of France and its network of appanages. I read this as appendages initially, and vassals as different subjects. We think that this way we can portray the progressive centralization of the crown under the reign of Philip II, Louis IX, Philip IV, while also portraying the powerful jurisdictional powers of the French feuds. We have 2 types of subjects in France, by the way. The vassals, which represent modern fief montants, I don't know how that's pronounced, and appanages, hopefully I pronounced that correctly as well, which were the feuds granted to the members of the royal family that could eventually revert to the king and the French crown. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. I'm curious if you could create appanages as well, if you could grant temporary status to someone, knowing that eventually you will reincorporate it, and maybe this is an interesting strategy to do in places where you don't have a lot of control. That way they can develop it because they will be a much more centralized if they are released as independent, but at the same time you won't have to reincorporate them and accumulate some sort of infamy. That's kind of maybe a play pattern that we see play out. You all may also know that there might be a problem incoming related to a couple of English possessions in the mainland. The county of Ponthieu, especially the Duchy of Aquitaine, here it is, as well as the Channel Islands and Guernsey, which comprise a dangerously close non-core location of England. They aren't big enough to be a worthwhile subject country, even if it might be a more accurate representation. So, wait, which one being a subject country? Are we talking about Calais here? But we do see Aquitaine, and this appears to be a subject of Great Britain, and then this is not a subject. Maybe this is what they're talking about, and this is, I think, is this modern day Calais, or is Calais up here? In any case, we do see a couple of the English possessions as they were, classic red versus blue here. Here we have a map of the locations, which is going to show you all the different places which are going to have their own resources, and this sort of thing. We also do see a little bit of mountainous terrain, which is going to be perhaps interesting for being able to play a little bit of tactical maneuvering of forces throughout this territory. Maybe that comes up. We see the hard borders for, I believe, not states, there's a bigger location, provinces. And so here we see the provinces, and you can see they're nicely divided up. They're going to have a ton of locations in each of them, giving separate various resources, of course. And we do see kind of a nice French-looking border here. Nice. Especially this one. This is the nicest of all. Of course, it's pronounced Nice. And so we see a lot of the old players, but this is much more detailed when you're looking at locations. Of course, they all have French names, which means they're all just like 1 or 2 syllables, but 18 letters. Continuing on here, we are aware that we have a severe inconsistency here, which is naming provinces after locations instead of provincial and regional names. We were not sure about what naming conventions to use when crafting this map. I have no idea what naming conventions should be used regarding French territory or any opinion on this. If anyone thinks that has any interesting insights, that would be cool. I don't know too much French or je suis un chat, and I don't know much geography of France either. I don't think I ever really play as France in map games very often, so because usually they start out quite strong, and I'm just less interested in that. So we would be glad to receive feedback on the names that you think would fit. For example, Artois instead of Ara, Anjou instead of Angers, etc. So it sounds like they want feedback, so if you want to log on to Paradox Forum and give them some feedback, it would be much appreciated for them if you have some insight into this. I don't. Here we have is this terrain? I thought that this was climate. Yeah, okay. It's labeled as terrain kind of in the dev diary, but here we see climate, mostly oceanic. I think we see a little snippets of continental and Mediterranean. Down obviously in the Mediterranean, but not necessarily obviously. You could have non-Mediterranean territory. I live in Southern California, where it is technically classified in terms of geography as being very similar to the Mediterranean. They're both chaparral instead of in terms of biome. Or this is how I learned it in school. We see a lot of flatlands here in regards to the topography. Pretty flat here, except down here where we have a bit of hills and some, is that plateau? Okay, a bit interesting. I think that thinking on Victoria 3, we know that there's a lot of resources here, and there's a lot of resources here in terms of Rhone, and I think that's the map we're going to look at next. Nope, not quite. Here we have the vegetation one, assuming farmlands, again, are going to be really valuable. We see farmlands up here, some farmlands up here. Wood and forests are also something that I don't know how critical it is going to be to have wood and forests. I believe in order to build buildings, you're going to have access to wood, so you're going to want some wood in your market. But maybe this is just Victoria 3, like, trauma or flashbacks of playing in the Middle East when wood is the best resource in Victoria 3, and you can't build any wood in the Middle East because there isn't any, and so it's just like we want to secure all the wood. We'll also read your feedback regarding the terrain of France, although we already know we have some issues to correct. For example, changing the vegetation of the landes to sparse instead of forests. Okay, fair enough. And then here we have a cultures map mode, which is maybe going to be an interesting struggle or problem for France in the beginning, because we see a whole bunch of different cultures, and I'm wondering what the acceptance looks like. I don't think we've had a dev diary on cultures yet, and so we're not sure how the underlying mechanics really work. Although there are 2 big cultural divisions in French cultures, Languedoc, I don't know how to pronounce any of this, and Languedoc, these 2. We think that their regional subdivisions would make this situation more accurate for 1337, where there's a long way until the cultural unification of France. Makes sense, and is also, yeah, so I think that one of the reasons why France has seemed so strong in previous Europa Universalis games, I think on some patches, is having to deal with the fact that it's unclear how we should deal with their level of unification, you know, as they kind of open up with, and they are often, if they get portrayed as too unified too early, then they're just incredibly strong and can really throw their weight around in a way that's maybe not historically accurate. Here we see the religious map mode. We're all Catholic. Not very interesting, not a very interesting situation. Only 0.8% of the population is of a different religion. Judaism, we haven't portrayed any Catholic heresy yet. Maybe Cathars still would have had some room in Languedoc as a Taiyu, an Oxian village from 1294 to 1324 points to. Maybe. While taking the screenshot, we improved the view of the map mode, making it more responsive to zoom levels. Nice. So we can zoom in specifically on the one that is the least important map. Or like the map that they're all Catholic. Alright. And here we see the raw goods. So the raw goods is going to continue to be kind of the one that I think is going to be the most interesting to look at least initially. I'm not sure if they're going to have local price considerations. I think it's just going to be market. But we do see some gold in here. We see some iron and lead. Over here we see alum again, which is going to be chemical, as many of you have noted, that's used for various things. We see some gems in here, which are interesting. Sand. Man, the sand is so far from the beach. What's this about? We see a lot of wheat as well. We see sturdy grains, and so I'm still thinking that it's going to be, we're going to have to see a lot more what, I'm just so curious how, like, having certain distributions of resources and stuff is going to inform your gameplay. We see coal here in what is a place that has a lot of coal and iron in Victoria 3. The name is escaping me right now, but both Germany and France fight over it. Okay, so this resource map looks pretty neat. We do like the resource map, and so let's continue on. The gold mines in the center of the map are going to die as they were exploited only in recent times. Which other changes do you suggest? They're going to die. That's neat. So they're talking about a mechanic that eventually these gold mines are going to get exhausted at some point during the game, but at game start we will have the presence of gold. Resources get eventually getting exhausted is an interesting gameplay pattern. I'm still curious what kind of reasons you'll have for wanting to build up cities where, because I assume you don't want to build them where you have wheat, which is maybe not intuitive because you want the wheat to supply the cities and to get shipped to the cities. But also, in terms of previous games of Europa Universalis, developing farmlands was easier, and if that continues, then I assume you'll want your major cities in this kind of band, which is also, or maybe you'll want them coastal. Maybe coastal is going to be an important feature. Scrolling down a little bit, we do see the market. We see the Bordeaux market, we see the Paris market, and these looks like the Aragonese market down here. Antwerp was split off from the London market. We do see that some area of either the lowlands or northern France is in London's market. You know what? That is actually the area that is under British control. So we're seeing, if we scroll all the way up, that is this English area plus a couple other spots. So we're seeing that political control is going to seemingly affect the market a little bit, but the Bordeaux market is, and maybe there's going to be reasons that market looks relatively small. Maybe it makes it hard to construct in here, and maybe this is why you leave Bordeaux a little bit less developed. I wonder if there's some... this also looks like it's an Aquitaine right here, right? And so this is kind of within more the England sphere, which is going to be maybe an interesting type of thing. I assume building in here is actually going to be a little bit worse because they have less access to resources than the Paris market, and so maybe northern France gets developed more as a result of this. I don't know if this is an emergent play pattern that's similar to history. The Aragonese market kind of pulls up a lot of this down here. But markets are going to be... I'm so keen on learning more about this game, but let's continue, because it's just neat stuff to look at more than anything. Paris already had to replace the fairs of Charlemagne as the main trading center in the region, driven by the growth of crown lands and royal power in the 13th century. Apart from that, we have the market of Bordeaux in Aquitaine, and so I don't know, in my head I want to say, yeah, now you can steer trade up the route, but I don't think that's how this works anymore, right? Just instantly EU4 kind of knee-jerk reaction. We do see a population map, and I think that if we could zoom in a little, This might be around Paris here. I think this is the largest population we've seen, period, of 374,000. We do see a lot of distribution of pops. We see quite a bit down here too, quite a bit in this middle area. Kind of zooming out, we see large, over 100Ks over here. We see a couple of those in Aquitaine as well, which is going to be interesting. Let's take a look and scroll down. What is this map mode, my friends? Population and how it looks with colors when you have the country clicked. Paris, centralizing France since Hugh Capet. We don't understand the reference because we're not so cultured. But we see, this looks like, so what are we looking at exactly here? Is this showing at a country level how many pops are in each country? I think that's what it's showing us. I think it's showing us that most of them are in Paris, relativistically speaking, because I think this is a heat map, right? And it's showing us that 5.64 total are here, relative to, let's say, Brittany, which has 1 million, Normandy, which has 1 million, and eventually, I assume you're going to want to try and incorporate all of this if you're playing as France. And which I don't think we had this type of map mode previously. Definitely like it. This map would be much more intelligible for us to look at if it were a heat map like this, which I think this is a heat map showing us where most of the people are in regards to France, in terms of the Crown lands, which is up in the north. Even up here has a reasonably large population, and we see that's 120k, 133k is kind of what you're getting in those areas. And that's it for today, except we're going to look at a couple more. Next week we will move to the non-eastern part of Europe, and we will take a look at Poland and the Baltic region. So it looks like we're going to be rounding out our total map, which someone has aggregated very kindly on Reddit, which is fantastic, and we are going to be getting some Poland from over here. Obviously it's not going to be contiguous with that, but we see a nice kind of full spread here of what's going on, at least in the most western portions of Europe, with the exception of England. And so really, really excited. The map looks super detailed overall. I think there's a lot of granularity. I'm super excited to be able to look at the stuff like, the goods distribution and formulate strategies like looking through and looking at these types of menus. I think that this is going to be really fun. And then we have this religious map from the previous dev diary, or the previous Tinto talk, which I think has some interesting hints. There's a little bit of North America here that's kind of cut off to the left because of how I'm recording in OBS. I suppose I could pull it over. But we see several different religions other than animist in North America, which is going to be interesting. I'm wondering what they are. Okay. And let's kind of swing that back. And we are seeing what I think, so we see animist down here, we see Theravada, but I think the thing that's maybe going to be interesting is going to be all the blank spaces. We see a ton of spaces that are uninhabited, and it's going to be, in my opinion, this is kind of an interesting thing because we will see maybe these are going to be ripe areas to colonize. Now, of course, all of the Americas are ripe to colonize, whether they're occupied or not, but it does give us an idea of where there aren't people and where, you can make some sort of ingress, this type of stuff. We see the Sahara is very barren. I think that we see Siberia is very, very barren. This, of course, all makes sense. We see, the central plains of Central Asia are roughly barren. A lot of the Middle East is barren. But I think that empty space is a little bit interesting in terms of what we're showing. Australia is also relatively barren, but some dude's head is covering it up, so that is what it is. And so moving forward, we do see kind of the normal looking stuff. We see Catholic all throughout Europe. We see Iberia, of course, having large pockets of Sunni. We see the Orthodox religion. We see, I can't zoom in far enough to see what exactly is in here, but we see a pocket of a different religion here, a pocket of a different religion here. We see a little bit up here. Sunni is spreading pretty far overall. Throughout the earth. I think that this is Shia in the green here, which you can also see pockets of Shia all throughout. Kind of in the middle of the Sunni. We see Mahayana over here. I'm not sure what this purple color is, but it's slightly different than the Mahayana. Hindu down here, and then Theravada all over here, and Tengrist in the north, and then Shamanist in the north over here as well. We get kind of a spread that, okay, it looks very similar to EU4. It's going to be interesting to see how big an effect religions play in regards to your gameplay. I remember EU4, and it's been a while since we've played, one of the strong strategies was that you would only accumulate aggressive expansion with members of the same religion as the target, and so you would, if you were playing as the Ottomans, you would, fight some Muslims, take their territory, and then fight some Christians, take their territory, and you would, in that way, by alternating, you would not accumulate as much aggressive expansion overall, this type of thing. Or if you completely annexed one religion, then there would be no one left to care. Stuff like this, we do see Japan here as well. I assume that they kind of have their own religion. Their red is a little bit darker. But this one is interesting to look at as well. It also gives us a little bit of an idea of, the complete map, because we have most of it here to look at, which I think is going to be the first time that we have had this. We do see all the trading lanes, and we know that this is dead space. From one of the very first Tinto talks, we know that a lot of the ocean is not going to be navigable. You're not going to be able to put any ships in here, and instead we see shipping lanes all throughout, connecting between the continents, which this will be, I think, maybe there's going to be some strategies for this. Like, just looking at it, it makes, these islands seem more valuable than they have in previous games, which certainly makes a lot of sense, because this can help to give you control of the shipping lane, because you will be able to hide your ships and the enemies cannot. And the shipping lanes are relatively narrow in a lot of spots, only occupying 2 provinces thick here. So maybe tactically speaking, you can blockade someone not by blockading their own ports all around, like if you wanted to blockade England, but you blockade them by blocking the shipping lanes up here maybe. And so I think that's another interesting thing to maybe glean from the video as well. Again, you see more shipping lanes kind of all throughout here, where they are, 2 to 4 things thick. You can probably see a little bit over here. It does seem like you have to island hop throughout here to some extent, and then there are shipping lanes that go off from Japan, off presumably to North America. But this has been Tinto Talks number 3, or Tinto Maps number 3. We have taken a look at France. Excited to see how they are handling France, or it's interesting to see how they're handling France, where they're going to go, the vassal kind of swarm at start. We also learned a little bit about 2 different types of vassalage as different subjects, appanages and vassals, where the appanages eventually get reincorporated into crown lands, but also this appanages, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correct, is maybe an interesting mechanic that you can use strategically when you don't have a lot of control in an area. Maybe we have control of Paris, we don't have a lot of control down here, so we release it as an appanage with the idea that they will have a lot more control, and so it'll be economically more viable, and we will reincorporate itself back into our nation later, and that maybe this is a good strategy for long-term growth. I don't know. It's something that's interesting to think about. So is, of course, the resource map. We do love the resource map. I wish there was more I could sink my teeth into in regards to what resources are good, but I don't think that there is, other than, like, knowing history. Like, gold is obviously good. We have to assume gems are good. We have to assume that having iron is important for waging war, but how important, we don't know. These types of things. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Do the YouTube algorithm thing. And other than that, have a happy Friday.